The house on Elmwood Lane was a steal. That should have been my first red flag. The realtor said it had character, which I later learned was code for something terrible happened here. But I was desperate. The rent was cheap, the space was huge, and the peeling wallpaper and creaky floors just added to its charm. Or so I thought. The first night, I barely slept. The wind howled through the cracks in the windows, and the old oak tree outside scraped its branches against the glass like fingernails. But it wasn't the noise that kept me awake. It was the feeling of being watched. I told myself it was just the unfamiliarity of the place, the shadows playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew something was off. The second night, I heard the footsteps. They started softly, like someone tiptoeing down the hallway. I froze in bed, my heart pounding in my ears. The footsteps grew louder, heavier, as if whatever was making them was getting closer. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. And then, just as suddenly as they started, they stopped. Right outside my door. I don't know how long I lay there, staring at the crack under the door, waiting for it to creak open. But nothing happened. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling. Old houses make noises, right? But then I noticed the scratches. Deep, jagged lines carved into the wood of my bedroom door, like something had been clawing at it. I hadn't seen them before. I would have noticed, right? By the third night, I was on edge. I kept the lights on, the TV blaring, anything to drown out the silence. But it didn't matter. Around midnight, the TV flickered off, and the room plunged into darkness. That's when I heard it, a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. It came from the corner of the room, where the shadows seemed to gather thicker than anywhere else. Leave. The voice was raspy, cold, and filled with a malice that made my blood run cold. I bolted out of bed, fumbling for the light switch, but the power was out. My phone was dead, too, even though I'd charged it just hours before. I stumbled toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, coming from all around me now. I covered my ears, but I could still hear them, echoing in my mind. And then I felt it, a hand, icy and skeletal, gripping my shoulder. I screamed, thrashing wildly, and the grip released. The door flew open, and I didn't look back. I ran out of that house, and didn't stop until I was miles away. I never went back. I couldn't. But sometimes late at night, I still hear the whispers. And I wonder if whatever was in that house followed me. I stayed at a motel that night, the kind with flickering neon lights and a lingering smell of mildew. I told myself I'd figure things out in the morning, but sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows in the corner of that room, heard the raspy voice demanding I leave. The next day, I decided to do some digging. I went to the local library and searched through old newspapers. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. The house on Elmwood Lane had a history, a dark one. Decades ago, a family had lived there. The father, driven mad by some unknown force, had locked his wife and children in their rooms before setting the house on fire. He was found hanging from the oak tree in the yard, a grim smile on his face. The article mentioned something else, too. Survivors of the fire claimed they'd heard whispers in the days leading up to the tragedy. Whispers that told them to leave. I felt sick. The scratches on the door, the footsteps, the voice, it all made sense now. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, feeding on fear and despair. And I had been its latest victim. I thought about leaving town, starting over somewhere far away. But something kept pulling me back. Maybe it was guilt or curiosity or something darker. I don't know. All I know is that I couldn't stay away. I returned to the house one last time, during the day when the sun was high and the shadows were at their weakest. I stood in the doorway, staring into the darkness, and I swear I heard it again, that voice, softer this time, almost pleading. Stay. I slammed the door shut and never looked back. But even now, miles away, I feel it calling to me, and I wonder how long I can resist before I answer.